Hello everybody, my name is Shirley Wiseman. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Today we're going to be making a pie, and this is not just any ordinary pie. It's going to be a sweet potato pie that somebody that has allergy restrictions can actually eat this pie. That's a problem that I have. I have celiac, so I can't have any gluten, any dairy, pretty much any grains, and no eggs. So it's difficult for me to eat pies. But I found a recipe that I've had to change up some here to modify it. So what we're doing is making a sweet potato pie, and the sweet potatoes, I've already baked them. Here they are. Baked them and mashed them up here. So I made this pie before, and it turned out really, really good. So I ate it all. So I don't have a pie to show you, but we're going to make it together. And what I did was I put it in a smaller pie plate, and it seemed like it was too much crust. So I'm going to be using, I've got a little bit of coconut oil in here, but I have a big, this is a 10-inch, I believe, pie plate. It's actually, I think, a tort dish, this one is actually. So we're going to be making a sweet potato pie that is gluten-free, grain-free, dairy-free, and egg-free. So basically that would be vegan, with no gluten. So vegan meaning no dairy or egg. So to start with, we're going to take a little bit of the coconut oil, and I show you here which coconut oil I use. We're going to make the crust first. So we're just going to prepare it, and then we're going to bake it in the oven, the crust, for 15-20 minutes. So I just put a little bit of oil on my hands. Now I've gotten them dirty, but I'm greasing the dish so it won't stick to it, which it won't stick anyway. Now this is kind of fluted in here, the edges, so it's not a smooth plate. Okay, so now I've got that. Coconut oil is very good for the skin, so I'm going to rub some in. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take some almond flour. And the recipe called for almond flour and oat flour, but I cannot have oat. It's a grain, and even if it's gluten-free, I still cannot have oats. So I'm going to use all almond flour. So we're going to put 2 cups of that. And it doesn't matter what brand you use, as long as it doesn't have anything else in it, as long as it's almond flour. I used to use a blend that was a gluten-free, but then I couldn't have tapioca starch and some of the other things that were in it. So I have just, and I use different brands, but this particular one, almond flour here. So I got 2 cups in here. I'll move this out of the way. And 2 tablespoons of arrowroot starch. It did call for tapioca. I cannot have tapioca. This is arrowroot flour. A big thing here. You can use cornstarch as well if you like, but I don't like to use it. Okay, it's kind of hard to get it out of here. So 2 tablespoons of arrowroot flour. And by the way, I'm going to be having Thanksgiving with my kids and my grandkids, so I'm making a pie that everybody can eat, not only just me, which I will enjoy it because normally I can't have pies, but it's good enough for everybody to have. Okay, so the other thing is 1/4 cup of coconut oil that's melted. So, and I get it in bulk, a big thing of coconut oil. This is organic and virgin and refined. I get it online from Amazon. So I've already melted. I just put some in here, and then I put in the microwave for 30 seconds and kept going till I got to 1/4 cup. So let me get my spoon here. Okay, so I'm just going to mix up my arrowroot flour and my almond flour, and then I'm going to make a little well and pour in my coconut oil. Okay, and then also I'm going to put in 3 tablespoons of maple syrup. Maple syrup is pretty expensive to buy. Well, if I can get my lid off, we might get it open. I think it has crystallized on here. Okay, so 3 tablespoons of maple syrup, and it doesn't really matter what brand you use, as long as it's, you don't have to have maple syrup. You can use agave. So 1, 2, 3. But I wouldn't use like pancake syrup or something that's not pure maple syrup, okay? So that's pure maple syrup. 3 tablespoons of that, and that's really sweet. It's going to make that taste good. And then we want some vanilla. 1 teaspoon of vanilla, and I use pure vanilla extract, not that imitation. Okay, so 1 teaspoon of that. All right. Now I'm just going to mix that up together. Then we're going to mold it into our pie plate. And like I said, I had this much in a 9-inch pie plate, and it just seemed like it was just too much crust. So I'm going to put it in a bigger pie plate this time. And I think I put something else besides, because it did call for almond flour, 1 cup, and 1 cup of oat flour, but instead of the oats this time. And I put something else last time. I don't remember what I put. I think I might have put quinoa flour. So if you want to substitute something else, but this time I'm doing just the almond flour. Okay, so I'm going to put it, this so you can see, I'm going to put it in my 10-inch pie plate here. And you don't have to mix it much. So it'll kind of stick anyway. So we're just going to, it's like playing in Play-Doh. We're just going to press it right down in the bottom and up the sides of the pie plate. And it doesn't stick to you. It's got the oil in it, and as well as the maple syrup helps it all stick together. You don't want it too thick at the bottom. Okay, so you kind of just keep going around. And this doesn't have to go all the way up the sides. You can. Like I said, last time I made it, I had it in a smaller pan. It just was really thick on the sides. So this one's going to be thinner. I'd rather have more filling than pie crust. So that's the idea here. So I'm just using the same recipe and just putting it in a bigger pie plate. So you just keep pushing with your hand up the sides and then just kind of thinning it out a little bit, pressing it. And this is going up pretty good up the sides. So keep pushing it. You don't want too much. It's actually going to go almost all the way up the sides. So this is how you make a pie crust that is basically grain-free. So it's just out of nut flour. Now, if you can't have nuts, you can use, there's also fava bean, garbanzo bean flour. There's other kinds of flours that are with beans if you can't have nuts. Or you can make just a regular pie crust for this with wheat flour if you wanted. But that's a whole different process. Okay, so this, I've got it pushed up. And my hands are greasy. Okay, so I want you to see. Okay, so that's what the pie looks like, the pie crust. And I'm going to put it in the oven, which is at 375. Okay. I put it in there, and that's for 15 minutes. And then after that, I'm going to take it out, reduce the oven to 350, and then we're going to whip up our filling and put it in the pie. Actually, I think we'll go ahead and just, while it's baking, we'll go ahead and mix up our filling. Okay, so for the filling, now since I'm using a bigger than a 9-inch, I'm using a 10-inch pie plate, and I'm just going to use my same bowl here that's got the almond flour in it. It's not going to hurt anything. But the recipe calls for 1.5 cups of mashed sweet potatoes. So what I did is I went ahead and took all my sweet potatoes and put them in the oven and baked them. And then I took all the filling, I peeled the skins off of them, and then put them in my food processor and made a puree. So that's what I've got here. And this is, I made 2 pies last weekend, so this is the leftover. And this is actually 4 cups. The recipe calls for 1.5 cups. And so I'm basically going to double it, but instead of doubling 1.5 to 3, I'm going to put a little bit more. So I'm going to use, you can just, I don't know what to do with my extra, so I'm just going to make more pie filling. Okay, so we're going to put it in here. Yeah, I got to check my clock. Okay. So it's 2:14, so at about just before 2:30, I need to check on my pie crust, which will probably be done. Okay, and these sweet potatoes are really sweet. You can do this also with pumpkin, which I did have some pie pumpkins that I also baked and took the filling out and whipped it up in my food processor, and then I just put it in the freezer. So you can always do that too. You can save your filling for later. Okay, so I've got my sweet potato in here. And now we're going to put in a cup of unsweetened almond milk. So we're going to double it. So we're doubling our recipe. So hopefully this is big enough thing here. Otherwise I can put it in something bigger. So normally you would have 3 cups. So we're doubling it, making a bigger 10-inch pie. If you were doing a 1-inch pie, it'd be 1.5 to 2 cups of mashed sweet potatoes. And 1 cup of almond milk. And I'm going to use 2 cups because I'm going to double it. Okay, so got that up to 1 cup. Now the almond milk I use is going to be, well, I use Almond Breeze unsweetened original. The recipe did call for vanilla, but I don't like the flavored. Okay, so 2 cups of almond milk, and I put this in a clear thing so we can see how it goes here. So I have 4 cups of mashed sweet potatoes and 2 cups of almond milk. We're getting kind of full. I might have to get it in a bigger bowl, but so we're just going to mix it up by hand because I've already smashed up my sweet potatoes. So you could do it in a mixer if you like, but there's no reason since it's already smashed up pretty fine. Okay, then we're going to put in a tablespoon of coconut flour times 2 because we're doubling it. The recipe calls for 1 tablespoon, so we're going to put 2 because we're doubling it. Coconut flour, and that's the kind I use. And you can use whichever. I have another brand too, so whichever brand. 1 tablespoon. By the way, this pie tastes really, really good. And then I served it with some coconut whipped cream, which I do have a video on how to make coconut whipped cream. And man, it was really good, just like a pumpkin pie or a sweet potato pie. I love pumpkin and sweet potato. Sweet potato is actually sweeter than pumpkin, a good bit sweeter. Okay, so we got the almond flour in it. So again, we've got in here for our filling for a big 10-inch pie, 4 cups of mashed sweet potatoes, 2 cups of almond milk, unsweetened original, and 2 tablespoons of coconut flour. And we're going to put 2 teaspoons of arrowroot starch. Normally you would put 1 teaspoon, but we're putting 2. I can find my teaspoons. And arrowroot starch, I use it in substitute of cornstarch or tapioca starch. I use it in gravies. So it's a good substitute for people that can't have corn or can't have tapioca. So I've got 2 teaspoons of arrowroot starch, 1 teaspoon of vanilla. So I'm going to put 2 teaspoons of vanilla. And again, I use the pure vanilla extract. Okay. 1, 2. Okay. And now I'm going to just stir it up a little bit. It's smelling pretty good, that vanilla extract. Again, I use the pure vanilla extract and not imitation. And you can actually make your own vanilla extract if you can get some vanilla beans and soak them in vodka. You can make your own. I've done that before, but vanilla beans are pretty expensive now to find them. You can get them online. Okay, so it's looking like this so far. Oops. Now, we're going to put a half a teaspoon of cinnamon. Okay, which in this case, we're going to put a whole teaspoon because we're doubling our recipe. Okay, so 1 teaspoon, and I got mine kind of whopping. Yeah, I might even put a little bit more. I'm going to put 2 teaspoons. So I'm making it really, I like cinnamon. It tastes really good with sweet potatoes. So I actually put 2 teaspoons. Normally you put 1 teaspoon if you're doubling it. If you're just making a regular, be half a teaspoon to 1 teaspoon. Okay, now the nutmeg calls for a 1/4 teaspoon. I'm going to put a half a teaspoon. think smells good. And I'm making mine a whopping, whopping half a teaspoon. Okay, and then it calls also for cloves, which is an eighth of a teaspoon. Cloves is pretty strong here. An eighth of a teaspoon, which doubling it will be a fourth of a teaspoon, which it's already kind of making my tongue go numb. And I got a little bit whopping of a fourth a teaspoon there. Okay, so then we've got our spices in here. Oh man, this is going to be so good. Oh, yummy, yummy, yummy. So we got Thanksgiving coming up, so this is good. And I'm going to actually put mine in the freezer because I'm going to go see my kids, going to travel, and I'm going to bring this pie with me. And again, I like to make desserts that are good enough for everybody. So I can't eat something that everybody else can eat, but everybody can eat and enjoy what I can eat. So I don't want something that just doesn't taste that good and for just me. I want it to be able to share it with everybody. Okay, so maple syrup. So we're going to put some maple syrup in it. Calls for 2 tablespoons, so that'll be 4 tablespoons. Okay, so we got 4 tablespoons of maple syrup. Oops. And then it calls for a fourth a teaspoon of salt. But I don't need to use salt. I mean, I don't see what the point is. I don't like salt. Kind of bothers me. So we're not going to put any salt in it. Okay, so we're going to stir this up. Man, this is smelling good. And again, there's no eggs in this, so people that are allergic to eggs can eat it. And the maple syrup kind of makes it a little bit kind of bind together. So, okay, so this is what it's looking like, stirred up. And again, I just made everything in the same container that I made the pie in because it's basically got the same ingredients in it anyway. So we're gonna taste it because no eggs in it, no raw eggs, so you can taste it. That tastes really good. Okay, so that's what it looks like. Okay, without it all spilling out. And as soon as the pie crust comes out, we're going to pour it in there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back with you after I've already baked it. So I'm going to pour it into the pie crust. I'm going to let the pie crust cool just a little bit, a few minutes. Make sure it doesn't bubble up. I'll kind of flatten down the pie crust a little bit. And then I'll put this in it, and then I'm going to bake it for about 40 minutes to an hour, because this is a bigger pie, usually be 35 to 40 minutes. And then I will also make some coconut whipped cream to go along with it. So when we come back with you, I'll be getting the pie out of the oven, so you can see what it looks like, and be making the coconut whipped cream with you. And then we can sample it and see how good it is. No, I don't want to sample it because I'm going to take it with me, but trust me, it's really good. The filling tastes good. The pie crust is good. So we'll be back with you shortly, and have a great day. See you.